Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Black Hat 2018 Las Vegas. Chuck Harold, SecurityGuideTV.com, ASISTV.com. Paul Vixie, FarsightSecurity.com. It's a lot of .coms. Mr. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, what do you guys do?
So Farsight is a security company. We've been in business for about 10 years, although only 5 under the Farsight name. And we tried to do something a little different. We are not in the threat intelligence business. We feel like there are enough companies out there telling the world what to worry about. And what we're telling the world is what is true, what are the facts, what exists, and how is it connected to other things that exist. In other words, we're in the observation business rather than the threat business.
Interesting. Now, that's a very different take on it.
I had reached a point in my career where I could do whatever I wanted next, and this was it.
That's fantastic. Tell us how it works. Tell us how it's different from the other, threat analysis people.
Well, again, we're not in the sort of moral judgment business. We don't tell you this IP address is bad, you shouldn't talk to it.
Right.
Although I launched that industry back in the 90s with the first anti-spam company, so I have some experience getting sued for that, which may have informed my business plan here. But really, what the difference is, we have sensors all over the network, all over the internet, all over the world, and they're operated by some partners, by some customers. We trade data. We don't buy any data, but we have a lot of information in real time about how the internet and especially how the DNS is being used. So, for example, we see lookups when somebody somewhere does a lookup. They're at some ISP, some university, somewhere whose IT team is partnered with us and is sending us data. We don't see their lookup. We never see the end user IP address because that would be surveillance. I'm not in the surveillance business. But we do see the upstream lookups from that university or from that ISP that go out to the internet and come back with public information. We gather that public information at the rate of 200,000 events per second.
Wow.
And we have a database of that information going back to 2010. So we are in a position to know exactly who published what on the internet. And if there's any relationship between those, like let's say you spammed me from one of your domains, and then you got that domain taken away because somebody complained about it, my customers are going to be, or my IT department, if you spammed me, are going to be able to find out what your domain was when it still existed, because I have the history, and I'll be able to find anything related to it, any other domain name that you shared infrastructure with, so that I'll be able to ultimately turn the single identifier that you attacked me with into an asset cloud signature, so I'll be able to see if it's you again coming back to me tomorrow with a different domain name but the same signature.
Now, how does this look to an end user? Is there a user interface? It's link analysis to one degree, right?
It's extremely geeky.
Okay.
So the security teams love us, and some of them access us through a web interface. It's a little bit primitive because we're not in the web interface business. What we really have is a database API. It's called a RESTful JSON API. It doesn't really matter, but geeks love it. And it means that anyone who's using, let's say, one of our partner applications in their security operations center can just use a plugin to use us to enrich what they're already doing. Or we have customers who write their own sort of defensive workflow where they make queries against our database in order to decide what to do next when they detect an event.
Now, who can use this? I know that Google could use it, or Facebook, or a giant company, but can we get down to the middle size or the little guy? I worry about the little guys because, the plumber has got 10 employees, doesn't do anything about his network and security, but he might be the most vulnerable.
He certainly is the most vulnerable, and the smartest thing for a plumber to do at this point is to find some managed security provider or managed ISP and not try to own their own server. Because if you're not going to invest in a staff who understands the network, you're going to be running bare-ass naked through the forest of the internet, and the bears will be after you.
Fantastic. ForcePointSecurity.com, Dr. Paul Vixie. Anything on the drawing board we should know about that's going to be kind of hot?
Well, yes, it's Farsight, not ForcePoint. But in addition, I want to say internationalized domain names are my big bugaboo right now. For the first couple of decades of the internet, it was only possible to get a domain name if it was in English, English character set, because the internet was originally funded by the DARPA the various research parts of the U.S. government, and they didn't care about, let's say, Latin or Cyrillic or any of these other character sets, but the real world does. And so as the internet has gotten out into the real world, people have said, I don't want to have to spell my company name in English in order to have a domain name. I want it to be in my native character set.
Right.
So that's now possible. But here's the problem. If you think about just a simple little character like a lowercase I, second letter of the word Microsoft is a lowercase I. There are only there are two. There's an uppercase I and a lowercase I in the old DNS, but in the new DNS there are about 50 of them.
Wow.
Because there's one in the Cyrillic character set, there's one in the Latin character set, there's one in the U.S. English character set. And that means that somebody who wants to, let's say, pretend to be Microsoft now has a lot of choices about how to register a domain name that to you as an end user is going to look exactly like the real thing.
Right.
It's not, they didn't use a 1 instead of an I, they used an I instead of an I, and it looks like an I because it's an I. And the people who brought all this to you from the Internet Technical and the Internet Governance teams all said, yeah, this is going to be a problem, and we recommend that not be done. But they don't have any policy for enforcing that rule. They have no ability to take down a domain name that breaks that rule. And so pretty much we started looking at this last November. We published a blog in January. We published a bigger report last month to try and let the world know there are a lot of these. In fact, the more we look, the more we find. There is no shortage of examples of this abuse. And it's, I think, not a huge problem yet, but it will be.
Now, does this have something to do with the fact that I don't know if we did do it, but we were going to move the management of domains away from America and over to a board of, international people. Has that happened yet?
That did happen.
And this is part of it, probably, why this is happening?
No. When the U.S. government had a role in sort of rubber stamping policies from that company, the nonprofit ICANN company in Los Angeles, they approved this. They understood that this is something the world needed. They didn't want this to be America's internet. So they would not have stopped this. They were not stopping this. This has nothing to do with that.
All right.
On the other hand, I would love it if somewhere there was somebody who had the ability to say no, and instead on the internet you always find a way to say yes, even if the idea is pretty bad.
I interviewed a guy last year at Black Hat. I said, what worries you the most? He said, I'm amazed the internet works. It's all based on trust still, mostly. Interesting. Dr. Paul Vixie, FarsightSecurity.com. I'll fix the rest in post. Back in a minute here at Black Hat 2018 Las Vegas on ASISTV.com.